been a really big deal. I used to look at it like I'm a epic quitter. I try stuff and I quit, and I try stuff and I quit, and I try stuff and I quit. And I used to feel a lot of, shame about that. I'm just a quitter. But really, what it was is I would try stuff to see if I was any good at it or not. And then if I was going to be average, I would quit it and try something else. And I've since decided, now this could be wrong, but this is what I've decided. I've decided that I was just looking for purpose. I was looking for a place where I excel. Otherwise, I have to deal with the fact that I'm a quitter, and I'm not going there. So purpose is a big deal for me. I believe that everybody has something that they are called to do and be. There is a way that your personality fits, your giftings fit, your interests fit, your calling fits, where you live, what you do there, the people in your life. It's all for a purpose. And what's really interesting is that statistically, they've been doing studies. And when we look at, is purpose actually going to affect our community at all? Like if we reach out to them with purpose, what's that going to do? Do you know this is the first generation in history that they say is motivated by the pursuit of purpose? There is a need for purpose. It's the first generation where one of the most attractive things an employer can offer is flexibility. So if you can work sometimes in the office and sometimes from home, or sometimes on a beach, sometimes wherever, it's helping people find balance in their lives, and they're able to do the stuff that they find purpose in. And so there's this general global move of this generation to pursue purpose, which I find so interesting because this is the first generation that is post-God. It's the first generation that doesn't believe en masse that there is a God, that God exists, that God rules. So could there be a tie between purpose and God? And I would say yes. Our basic function on earth as humans is to honor God. That is our purpose. We are here to bring glory to God. We are here to give glory to his name. We are here not just verbally to do that, but in our lives, in our actions, how we function. We are designed as humans to bring glory to God. That's our purpose. So if you take God out of it, you end up with a generation that has no idea why we're here. We have no idea why get up in the morning, why continue on, why do I go to that same job all the time, why do I live like this, and we're searching and we're scrambling and we're hunting for something that can't be met in anything or anyone but God. One of the basic scriptures for this one, Proverbs 29:18, of course, is where there is no revelation, the people cast off restraint. And so interestingly, the Amplified on this one says, where there is no vision, no revelation of God and his word, the people live unrestrained. The Passion Translation says, where there is no clear prophetic vision, the people quickly wander astray. In other words, when we don't know what God says about us, we live life carelessly, scrambling about, grabbing at things, chasing stuff, pursuing things. We live this life that doesn't make a ton of sense because we're hunting for that revelation of who God says we are. Whether you believe in God or not, that is going to be a reality of your existence. We will hunt for God. We will pursue God. So I really equate purpose to that prophetic revelation that's talked about in Proverbs 29 there. Purpose is God's prophetic revelation about your life. What does God say about who you are? What does God say about why you're breathing? Really, if you have a pulse, maybe just check this morning, but if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. You can tweet that out. If you have a pulse, you have a purpose. There's a reason if God's giving you breath that you are here. And we have to actually ask those questions. We have to pursue God on this and say, okay, why am I here? We've got a generation that really asks about everything. What's in it for me? What am I getting out of it? What's in it for me? Do you want to come to this event? Do you want to be part of this? Can you serve here? Can you volunteer here? Can you donate to this? Are you interested in this job? Are you interested in this activity? And we as a society ask, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? But what we need to start looking at is this idea of purpose. And we take the sentence and we move it around. And we say, what's it in me for? Bad English for anybody who's an English teacher, I know. But what's it in me for? The things that I'm interested in, the stuff that I'm drawn towards, the stuff that piques my attention, the stuff that I cry about, the stuff that when I'm scrolling through Facebook, it actually catches my attention. And I have a heart response to that. What's that in me for? Why am I like this? Why did God put that in me? What's the move that he wants to see happen out of my life? So we're looking at this built on purpose, the idea that actually there is a master planner and a master plan. We have to embrace that. And I know for some of you, for probably most of us, you've heard different things. I am praying for a revelation of this that would go past our mental faculties. I am praying that we would receive this on the deepest levels. Because it's one thing to look at people who have had a completely destroyed life and say, God has a purpose for that. He's going to bring good out of the bad. But all of us, every single one of us, if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. So what is it? Every one of us needs to be living to the degree that God has made us to live. There's this interesting concept in terms of purpose where psychologists and science actually backs up the Word of God. Crazy, I know. But they've been studying, and the idea of purpose is the one thing, if people have a purpose, they will be motivated to move. They will be motivated to change. They will be motivated to get up in the morning. They will be motivated to live life. As soon as they lack purpose, this is the trail that they're finding in terms of suicide, in terms of drug and alcohol addiction. They're seeing it in sports stars who move past their time age-wise and they can no longer play professional sports. If they have not tied into a different purpose, they lose it. They lose everything that they have gained because they don't know who they are without that thing that they did. But your purpose is more than what you do. Your purpose is more than your job. Your purpose is more than your bank account. Your purpose is more than just your situation in life. Your purpose is who you are, and who you are is always foundationally made to honor God. Who you are is meant to bring glory to God. There's a story, Viktor Frankl is a man who survived one of the Nazi concentration camps. He was a psychologist and a mental neurologist who studied the brain, who studied thought, and he was put into a concentration camp, World War II. Can you imagine what it would be like to be somebody who analyzes behavior in a situation like that, right? Completely watching how people are responding. And he wrote a book when he survived about it, and he talked about purpose, and he talked about the fact that the people who survived were the people who found a reason to. The people who found purpose, who found a purpose for breathing, a purpose to survive, a purpose to keep going. Those people survived. For him, his purpose that he tied into was that he had written a book just before he was taken into the prison. And the book, of course, got lost along the way. And so he made it his purpose in every day to try and remember what it was he had written in the book, so that when he got out, he could write it again. So every day he made an effort to exercise his mind towards writing something on the other side of this. The point is, even in the worst of possible situations, everything stripped away, every natural piece of human decency stripped away, purpose will keep you alive. Because purpose is something that God put in you. Purpose is something that is there from the beginning of time. It's attached to your identity. It's attached to the breath that God put in you. The breath, we talked about this last week, the breath that we breathe is the breath that he gave us. It's the piece of himself that functions in us. And so it has a reason for being. It has to have a reason for being. It has to have something that we function in every day. And so one of the things that we're looking at in this generation is that because we've taken God out of the equation, We've got a society that doesn't understand purpose. We've got a society that doesn't know why are we even here. And we see these epidemics of twisted things going around because we're looking for something that matters. And so we have to look at a prescription for the sickness. We have a sickness in our understanding of purpose. We have a sickness in understanding why are we here. It's not just for our enjoyment. It's for His. And when He is enjoying it, we enjoy it all the more. That's the benefit of it. So there's a prescription for purpose, and we're going to talk about that today, the prescription for purpose. One of the things that I thought was interesting, I've never really noticed, I don't know if you guys got the image up there or not, but the picture of prescription is an RX. You remember seeing that on the top of your prescription forms? But an RX, and I was like, I actually don't even know what that means. It's ancient. Doctors in the house, doctors, nurses. Sometimes I say these things and people just, I'm scared I'm going to get this wrong. But it actually is an ancient Latin word that means recipe, and the literal translation means take thou. Take thou. And so, yeah, ooh. Now when you see your prescription, you're going to know that you're actually supposed to do something here. The idea is, I as the doctor, am giving you this prescription, but it's on you to take it. It's on you to decide whether or not you apply it. Now, ooh, see, this is the thing. There it is. So this is what we're moving towards. The purpose prescription is understanding that we are redeemed, restored, and recommissioned. Redeemed, restored, and recommissioned. And when we apply these things, we suddenly live a life of purpose. And we're going to walk through these today. But this life of purpose is the thing that gets you going in the morning. It's the thing that keeps you going when you want to quit. It's the reason why you carry on when you think you're too tired, when you think it's not worth it. It's the bigger picture. We have to understand that we are redeemed, restored, and recommissioned. Oddly enough, Word also doesn't think that recommissioned is a word, so I may have made that one up, but I think it should be a word. So anyway, we're going to talk first about being redeemed. Now, redeemed is one of these words that gets used in the Christianese perspective. I think if I was hearing it for the first time, I'd be like, yeah, I'm redeemed by God. I don't know what that means. But it actually means to buy back, to make good, to reinstate, and to repurchase. It means that when we were bought, or when we were born into this world, we were instantly, through no fault of our own, but through mankind's fault, we were born into a sinful world with a sin nature. So God made us. He knit us together in our mother's womb. He gave us a purpose. We'll talk about that in a bit. And we are born into this world, and we suddenly are lost. We're born lost. We're born in an alternate reality that's contrary to our design. And so whether you were born into like a deeply painful, broken, nasty place or not, whether you were born into a Christian home, every single one of us, sin separates us from God. Sin creates this barrier, and it's like somebody pawned us. If you think of redeemed as a pawn ticket kind of thing, it's like we've been pawned. We're somewhere that we don't belong. And Jesus, whether your life was completely lived out in the toilet, or whether it was just a pretty good life, but still sinful, it had to be redeemed. God had to come in, Jesus had to come in and redeem you from the place that you were. He came in and He paid the purchase price to buy you back, to buy us into this place. One of the interesting things about this concept, and this is where I for one, I was born into a Christian home. Well, my parents got saved when I was 3, so I was born into a non-Christian home, but raised in a Christian home, baptized when I was 7, Spirit-filled. I grew up in the church, but I still had to be redeemed, and I still am presently in the process of being rebuilt in Him, being reconditioned, being remade in Him. But one of the things that we have this way of going to in our mind is that people who are really messed up, we'd say a hot mess. If you're a hot mess, it makes sense that God would really have to pay that price, the stripes that Jesus bore, the suffering that he took, the blood that he shed, because, it took a lot to pay for some people, really. Pastor Les, that took a lot to cover him and to make sure that he was properly paid for. Other people, practically angels on earth, but, took less, whatever. Honestly, what we have is this faulty mindset of like antiquing, where we look at things that are, some things are restored and they're of a different value than something that was saved in mint condition. We have this idea that a car, my understanding of this anyway, if a car was saved in mint condition and 50 years later it's got all its original parts, it looks good, it's still shiny, it's just old, it's worth more than the one that's had to be rebuilt and refurbished. We know that when you go antiquing and you're looking at a dresser or something and they look at the one that has been maintained in good condition, well, that's worth a lot. If somebody actually painted the thing, it's worth less. So we have a mindset that stuff that was more broken, stuff that was more damaged, is worth less. And that there's a difference in price, there's a difference in payment, there's a difference in value. But the bizarre thing is, no matter what kind of life we lived, the price was the same. God's value system is identical for each one of us. It's identical. And do you know what really determines the value? I occasionally will watch these car auction shows with Wayne or whatever, and I am amazed at when some weird little lime green ancient bug of a car shows up on the auction block, and it's like the auctioneer starts and they start at 50,000 and go up, and it's like 80,000, 90,000, 100,000, 120, 100. I'm like, are you kidding me? I wouldn't pay a thing for it. But what determines the value, I don't want to be seen in that, right? But what determines the value is what somebody is willing to pay. That determines the value. So every single one of us, your value is the same as your value, 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 same as your value. There is no difference. Christ came and said, I will pay maximum price. Whether somebody else sees the value in it or not is irrelevant. I see the value. I see the value, and I will pay the price. We have to understand this is our foundation for the purpose that we live, is that whether somebody else thought it was valuable or not, whether we think we're valuable or not. See, some of us need to hear that. Whether you think you're valuable or not is irrelevant. What determines value is the price someone's willing to pay. You were paid for with the maximum price. Romans 5:6-8 says, for when we were still without strength, in due time Christ died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die, yet perhaps for a good man someone would dare to die. But God demonstrates his own love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Colossians 1:13-14 says, he has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of his love, in whom we have redemption through his blood, the forgiveness of sins. And so we're going to walk through in the next little bit here one of the most amazing rescue packages of purpose of all time is the transformation of the Apostle Saul to the Apostle Paul. It's an interesting journey because the guy at the beginning of the story and the guy at the end of the story are completely different people, and yet God's view never changed. That's important when we're looking at purpose. The story of Saul is in Acts chapter 9. We won't go there, but the story is that Saul is this guy who I love to tease from the pulpit. Someday we'll have a chat. But the Apostle Paul, he wasn't the Apostle Paul, but Saul at the beginning was this guy who was raised up in the Sanhedrin, raised up in the temple, raised up in the trainings of the law, and he was this zealous guy. He was this fanatical guy. He was very passionate, very committed. He was that guy that everybody probably would have said, just take a chill pill. Like, dude, you need some Prozac. You are a little intense. He was very intense about everything that he did, took it upon himself to hunt down Christians and ferret them. Like he was into it. He was deeply pursuing religion. He was deeply pursuing what he perceived as truth at the time. And it's interesting because he has the encounter with Jesus. You remember the story? He gets knocked off his horse. This bright light comes, and Jesus himself speaks to Saul, and he goes, "Why are you persecuting me?" And in a moment, he has this encounter and this revelation that, oh my goodness, I'm completely off. I'm completely wrong. And so he ends up blinded by this thing. He ends up in a town waiting for help. And God talks to this guy named Ananias, man, brave guy, and says, you need to go to Saul. He's in this place. He's in such and such a house, and you need to pray for him, and you need to lead him basically into salvation. You need to lead him into newness of life. And Ananias goes, okay, God, just so you know, like he hunts us. Like just in case you were unaware, and God answers, Jesus answers in Acts 9:15. I find this so interesting because really, Saul is the guy that we love to hate. He's that guy, right? And Jesus answers, and he says to Ananias, Acts 9, chapter 9, verse 15, the Lord said to him, go, for he is a chosen vessel of mine to bear my name before Gentiles, kings, and the children of Israel. What? What? He's murdering Jesus' followers, and yet Jesus says, I've actually picked him. He's going to be the one who's going to speak truth into all those places. I'm going to take him before kings, and he's going to proclaim who I am. Do you know it's like those antique road shows, or what's the one on right now? American Pickers. I love to nap during that show on TV. But those guys, it's a good one in the background. But those guys will go into these places in the middle of nowhere where somebody's been hoarding for 8 decades or something, and they look and they're digging through, and they'll be like, they'll see this corner of metal peeking above a stack of boxes and behind cars and whatever, and they'll be like, is that the Pennzoil sign or something like that, some metal sign, and they can spot it from across the room, behind the junk, under the dust, under whatever, but they see something of value back there, and they will get up and climb over the stuff and dig through the things to go find this sign that suddenly, I'm looking at it again, it's like some old piece of junk, it's a metal, whatever, but these guys are like, that's worth like $4,000, like we can sell, and they see the value ahead of time. God looked at Saul and he said, I see the value ahead of time. He redeems him. He pays for him ahead of time because he knows the value. He knows what it's worth. Jesus looked ahead in time and not only saw you just because he wanted another person, he saw your value to him. He saw what it was in your life that was going to bring him glory. He saw who it was that when you reflected him was going to bring glory to his name. It was going to delight him. It was going to make him famous. It was going to show who he really is. That's the stuff that Jesus talked about when he talked to Ananias, and he said, I already see who Saul is. He already sees who you are. So he redeems you. And we come to that moment of salvation. We come to that place where we say, okay, I receive that you have paid the price for me. I accept it. I receive it. Please forgive me of my sin. Forgive me for walking in darkness. Forgive me for walking in that place of rebellion towards you. I want to be yours. But then we need to be restored. And restoration, I think, is so interesting. To be restored means this. It means to bring back, to put into an original state. To put back to an original state. It returns us. There's this place that we move into. We can use, churchy words and we can say sanctification, but that's the process. It brings us back to the place that God intended us to be. It's the place where even though he finds us in a hot mess, he moves us to the place of the value that he sees ahead of time. Psalm 139, 13 to 16, we're gonna read this because even though it's well known, and I mean, you need to zone in on this with me. If you've grown up in the church, you've been in this for a long time, we need to understand it through a different set of eyes. Psalm 139, starting at verse 13. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you because, or for, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. That's an interesting expression here. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. What are the marvelous works? Me. What? I am the marvelous works. God knit me together in my mother's womb. He knit you together in your mother's womb, and you are the marvelous works. You are the place that he intended for his glory to shine. You are the one, the psalmist says, I praise you because I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. What? That my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they were all written for me. Now catch this, the days fashioned for me. You made me fearfully and wonderfully and marvelously, and you fashioned days for me. There was a plan, there was a purpose for this that you saw ahead of time, and I need to be restored to that original purpose. No matter what, whether I've lived a good life, there is no such thing as good people. There are saved people or not. There are living people or dead people. That's it. But this, there are days written for me, fashioned for me, before I lived any of them. So when we're looking at purpose, no matter what you've been through, whether your life has been smooth or whether it has been radically difficult, the same question applies. What was my purpose before any of this started? Because God wants you to restore you to the thing he designed you for before you lived a single day. It doesn't mean that the journey is worthless. It means that he'll use the journey to help show forth your value to him. It means that he will use the tests and the trials and the pain and the struggles, and he will make a testimony out of it, but there was an original purpose all along the way. There are 3 things that are going to be restored. Number 1, it's a new heart. We get a new heart. It's like a new engine in a car. It's immediate. I've watched Wes and Beth, restoring cars. Someday we're going to get Wes to do a presentation with what he's been doing, his journey with that. But they sand and sculpt and paint and craft every square inch of those cars. But the engine just comes in. It's a brand new engine. It gets delivered awesome, and it gets put in awesome as it is. It's not a refashioned one. Usually when they go for the big cars, they put in a new engine. And that is like the new heart. Ezekiel 36:26. Ezekiel 36:26 says, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. So that's the thing that happens at salvation. That part, that engine, God just gives you a brand new one. That's what happens that day you say yes to Jesus. You got a new engine. It is ready to go. It roars. It moves. It purrs. It does whatever you want it to do, but it's a good engine. And that comes in the moment. You are saved in a moment. There is a transfer that happens in a moment of salvation. God puts in a new heart. But A new engine with a lousy frame and a lousy body and mouse-filled seats is not done, right? Not everybody's going to see the value in that yet. So the next thing that happens is a new mind. It's a new mind, and that's like the computer system in the car. It's the wiring that's attached to the doors and the air conditioning and the lights and the radio. It's this thing that's intricately tied together with everything that functions. It's this thing that where if the computer comes in, it has to be tied together with everything that car is meant to do. Every function of that car. Does that make sense? So this is a progressive thing. It doesn't happen all at once. Wes and Beth, when they're working on their cars, this is the kind of thing that will take weeks or more. It's months maybe. It's this thing where everything has to be rerouted and retied in. So this wiring, this is how your mind works. We don't get saved and suddenly we think everything correctly. Your heart is alive now, but your mind still needs to be renewed. And so this is the thing, Romans 12:2. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may be able to prove what is good and acceptable, the perfect will of God. So there has to be a time where if we're talking about purpose and it's like, God, I thank you that you made me. I thank you that you love me. I thank you that you paid the purchase price for me. And I believe that it's probable, it's actually guaranteed, that my thinking is faulty up until now. And it needs to be replaced, and I need to be rewired. So I need to start thinking about life the way you think about life. I need to start thinking about how I'm meant to function. What is there for me? What did you put in me through your perspective? I need to get the new wiring harness in there. I need the new computer to tell me what to think. So this is the journey. This is the thing. Some of us never pursue this. It's like the prescription, right? You have to actually take all the pills in the bottle, right? That what your doctor tells you, make sure you finish the prescription, because if you quit early, it will make it worse. Right? Doctor, that's correct. Yes? Take the whole prescription. This is it. Salvation is the starting point. The next thing, though, we have to be transformed in our minds. And this is the process when we're talking about purpose. If you have one, do you know it? Have you pressed through to find it? Have you allowed God to change your thinking to the point that you realize he's actually excited for you to wake up every morning because he wrote this day for you? Have you worked that through with him? The third thing that changes is, again, progressive, and it's the behavior. It does not automatically change. Our behavior, our function in God is a progressive thing. It's, again, a sanctification. It's the thing that moves, and this is the part that other people see. You can get saved and you have a heart transformation, but it takes a little bit for the outside to show. And so not everybody might see the progress. Not everybody might not see your purpose right away. But as we begin to have the other parts renewed, we begin to transform even in the area of behavior. So Ephesians 4:22-24. Ephesians 4:22-24. Says, put off concerning your former conduct the old man which grows corrupt according to the deceitful lusts, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind, and that you put on the new man, which, get this, was created according to God. The new man, it's created, essentially, it's created according to God's original design. In other words, you have to look at your actions, you have to look at your behavior, and you take it before God and you go, what was this thing created to do? Let's find out what the original design was, and I put that on. It was created according to God in true righteousness and holiness. So what happens is so often we've got these areas in our life and we just say, I'm going to stop doing that. I need to stop doing that. Oh, I need to stop doing that. I need to stop doing that. I need to quit that. Oh man, I suck at that. I'm really terrible at that. Oh, I'm repetitively doing that. I need to quit that. What do you imagine would happen if Saul had encountered Jesus, been transformed by his presence in a moment, and then just decided to hate on himself and remind himself of how terrible he really was, how much he wished he had done something else, how much he wished he could go back in time. What if he hated himself so much that he said, you know what, I have learned about these Christians, and I know that the one who was probably closest to Jesus right at the end was John, so I'm going to try very, very hard to be like John. What if Paul the passionate decided to be Paul the passive? What would happen if he decided to go off of his heart and his emotions and leave who he was behind? Something would have been disconnected. So what he did was he took who he was and he committed it to the Lord. He didn't despise it. He allowed God to restore it. He took it and he allowed God to transform it. The truth is, most of the things that you dislike about yourself, it's not that they're wrong, it's that they're being funded by a wrong power source. They're pointed in the wrong direction. So the same thing that is your deepest weakness will probably end up being your greatest strength. It's the thing that when it's surrendered to God, he will use it for his purpose. He put it in there for a purpose. I'm not talking about sin, but I'm saying sin will make use of the gifting that God put in there. Sin will make use of the good stuff that God had for his intentions. And so if all we do is despise it and hate it and wish it away, we'll miss our purpose. So we can't just sit there and despise it. We don't despise it, we surrender it. We don't despise it, we surrender it. The things that we are, that we feel like need to change, don't just try and get rid of it. Give it to God to see what he wants to do with it. Allow him to transform you. Allow him to change you. Allow him to restore something to its original function again. I've often said, for me, I used to struggle with so much, there's various verses about, being quiet and humble and meek and whatever. And it was like, I really need to be a quieter person. I need to be more gentle. I need to be more, just more sweet. I want to be one of those ladies that is just nice. And basically that's like trying to stuff a volcano back into itself. Like, it's just, I can be like that for a minute or two, maybe even a day or two, but eventually something's coming out somewhere, So I know you're all like, pray for Wayne, pray for Wayne. I can either try and not be so verbal. I can try and not be expressive. I can try and not be animated. Or I can surrender it to God and go, you made it, use it. Right? Like, every one of us, you've got a thing that he wants to use. You've got a part of you that he wants to use. This is the crossover of what we're stepping into. Philemon verse 6 says that the sharing of your faith may become effective by the acknowledgement of every good thing that is in you in Christ Jesus. The effectiveness of our faith comes from acknowledging what's in there. Like, if it's in there, it's for him. Give it to him. Let him do it. There is just some stuff in this area of purpose that we need to understand. This leads us just to wrap up into the third thing, which is to be recommissioned. And recommissioning is to go back to the original mission, that thing when you were in your mother's womb, and he knit you together and said, you need to be like this, this, this. This person needs to be sensitive. This person needs to be feeling. This person needs to be bold. This person needs to be brave. This person needs to be analytical. This person needs to question stuff and dig into it. This person needs to be willing to stand in front of people. This person needs to be on the back burner and interceding. This person needs to be this way. And it came with a purpose that would bring him glory. So recommissioning means after we allow God to begin to restore, we also allow him to recommission us into the original mission. Recommission us. Reassign us. Put us back. He's not going to, he's going to change your heart. He's going to change your mind. He's going to change your actions, but he's not going to change your assignment. What? He is going to change your heart. He's going to change your mind. He's going to change your actions, but he will not change your assignment. You were born with an assignment. You were born with a purpose. You were born with a mission. This is the thing. When Jesus said to Ananias, he says, I've already picked out Saul. He's going to do this. One of the most amazing things is Galatians 1, verse 13 to 16. And Paul says this, for you have heard of my former conduct in Judaism, how I persecuted the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it. And I advanced in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries in my own nation, being exceedingly zealous. I want you to just catch that word, exceedingly zealous. That's how he was like a dog with a bone, right? For the traditions of my fathers. But when it pleased God, get this, who separated me from my mother's womb. Paul has this revelation. Oh my goodness, I was zealous for Judaism, but God had already marked me from the moment of my birth. He already set me apart from my mother's womb and called me through his grace to reveal his Son in me, that I may preach him among the Gentiles. Saul, who's now Paul, has this revelation of who he really is. He's like, I was exceedingly zealous here, but now I realize that it's serving a purpose. And so we're just going to look at these boxes here. These boxes, these lights are like the framework of your life. It was put in place. It's a neutral thing. And if they're just white for a minute, we're just going to go white. See, there is something about the neutrality of what's the framework that really God wants to use. And so if it is just the color that you see is reflective of what's on the inside. If it is all white, that looks good, but it's not that exciting. What it is this image of just white. It's light through the framework, right? Now follow with me for a minute. You're gonna remember this all week long. You're gonna be sitting at stoplights and seeing light changing, and you're gonna be thinking about God. So it's like God in you. You're the framework. He put this stuff in you for his purposes, but it's just a frame. So God shines through, but what the interesting thing is about white light is really all the colors put together, right? Everybody who understands color, white is all the colors put together. And it just looks white. But we all know from the benefit of a rainbow that when the color is split and it's refracted onto different angles, it shows different. So let's just say it goes to a different color now. Woo! Okay, so this is some people, I think this is me. I think I'm a red person. I don't do soft blue ever. Like I'm a red person. Beth is a red person. We got some red. How many red people in the house? Yes, be red. Be red. What that means is like you're a passionate person. And so when Jesus comes into you and you allow him to use your framework, you are passionate for Jesus. People see you and they see a passionate Jesus lover. They see a passionate Jesus follower. They see somebody who could probably lead something. And other people run and hide because you terrify them. And so they're looking for a blue person. They're looking, do we have blue? Well, they're looking, okay. So how many people would say you're a blue person? Blue is calming, blue is peaceful, blue is the promises of God. You're the kind of person that if people want to talk about something, they want to dialogue about it. They want you to pray for them. They want you to care for them. They're going to come find a blue person. They're going to come find a relational person. They're going to run from me, but they're going to run to you. They're going to see a different element of Jesus because Jesus is the one who said to the broken, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. He's that person. But he also said, I will build my church and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. So you don't necessarily want a blue thing running at the front of the pressing against the gates, but you do want it cleaning up the mess behind you, right? You do need some different colors. You need all the colors to show up to get the job done. The more colors that we've got, the more the picture of God we actually have. So let's just see what that could look like. We have, which are you? Which are you? We actually all together, when we see a little bit of pink, we see a little bit of green, we see a little bit of turquoise, we see the different aspects of God. Orange, I've learned recently, is our accounting department here in the church. Orange is organized and orderly and focused and really hates me when I bring things up last minute. Orange doesn't do red as well as you'd think it would. So, but when you see all of these things, you may identify with one and not another. There might be like, that's not my favorite color, don't dig that. But all together, we see God. We see God, right? This is the thing. This is the thing that God has called us to. When we move into Built on Purpose here, I don't want everybody to be like me. We don't want everybody to be like Pastor Les. We don't want everybody to be like Pastor Jason. We don't need everybody to be like Melody. We need you to be you according to your original design. And the more of us that are surrendered to that, the more of Jesus is seen in this place. The more we look like God. Man, this morning, I believe one of the number one things that we have to look at is, are you standing here as a blue wishing you were pink? Do you hate yourself for being blue? Do you criticize yourself for being blue? Are you standing there as a red wishing you were green? Wishing you were a little bit more, that direction? Are you wishing away the framework that God put in you? See, the circumstances of life, the experiences of life, they're all subject to change. God's going to redeem it. He's going to use it. But allow him to restore in you the original design. You are who he made you to be, not for your own simple enjoyment, not because of what other people think, because he needs you to be you. Because in you, somebody will see God. Maybe there's not so many of some colors, and maybe you feel like the odd person out. Maybe you feel like in any crowd you are the weird one. Get over it. You're needed. See, that was red. I could have said that nicer, like a blue person. I could have said, we welcome you as you are, or something. But the point is, I can't even fake it, man. The point is, you have to stop despising yourself, criticizing yourself, speaking down to yourself, limiting yourself, filtering yourself, holding yourself back. We have to come and say, God, you redeemed me, you're restoring me, and you're recommissioning me to the original design. This is going to be fun. Interestingly, when we talk about purpose, literally, here's a little fleshy benefit. Studies show that people who live on purpose, with a sense of purpose, this is not just God thing, but they have a sense of purpose, live longer, make more money, and report a far higher satisfaction in life in every day. So when I say we need you to live your purpose, it's not a to-do, it's a we get to. It's the King of Glory coming in and go, this is going to be the funnest thing you've ever done. Let's stand together this morning. I'm going to have the